Welcome to the show. Breaking news. Sean Combs indicted on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. So this is a RICO charge, federal, in charges unsealed a day after his arrest in Manhattan. The music mogul known as Diddy was accused of running a criminal enterprise that threatened and abused women. Sean Combs was arrested in New York on Monday night, several months after federal agents raided his homes in Los Angeles and Miami Beach. As a visionary music mogul since the early 90s, Sean Combs produced era-defining hip-hop and R&B hits for stars like the Notorious B.I.G. and Mary J. Blige. And he became a raffish tabloid regular through his star-studded parties and raunchy catchphrases on the reality show Making the Band. But in an indictment unsealed by federal prosecutors on Tuesday, Mr. Combs was also described as the boss of a years-long criminal enterprise that threatened and abused women, coercing them to participate against their will in drug-fueled orgies with male prostitutes. The 14-page indictment against Mr. Combs, who is known as Diddy and Puff Daddy, includes 3 counts of sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Prosecutors said that to commit these acts, Mr. Combs and his employees engaged in kidnapping, forced labor, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Mr. Combs, 54, was expected to appear for an arraignment later on Tuesday in Manhattan. He's going to plead not guilty, obviously. Mark Agnifilo, one of Mr. Combs' lawyers, said outside the federal courthouse on Tuesday morning. He's going to fight this with all of his energy and all of his might and the full confidence of his lawyers. And I expect a long battle with a good result for Mr. Combs, he said. The charges against Mr. Combs were revealed a day after he was arrested in a Manhattan hotel room following an investigation that has been active since at least earlier this year. The indictment includes graphic descriptions of what Mr. Combs referred to as freak-offs, highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity in hotels and other locations that were fueled by drugs and could go on for days. At these events, the government says women were plied with drugs and coerced to participate in sex with prostitutes. Those coerced to participate in these orgies typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use, according to the indictment. Mr. Combs would watch these events, sometimes while masturbating and recording video. According to the government, Mr. Combs used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. 50 Cent told us a long time ago, never go to a Diddy party, and if Diddy wants to party, tell him no. No victims are named in the indictment, and the government's sex trafficking count mentions only an anonymous victim 1. But the descriptions of the events appear to mirror accusations made in a lawsuit last year by Cassandra Ventura, Mr. Combs' former girlfriend and an artist signed to his label Bad Boy under the name Cassie. Miss Ventura settled her lawsuit, which was filed in November after just one day, with Mr. Combs denying any wrongdoing. but the indictment mentions freak-offs and describes them in similar terms to Ms. Ventura's suit as involving copious amounts of drugs and other supplies for the participants. When federal agents raided Mr. Combs' homes in Los Angeles and Miami Beach in March, the indictment said law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. A lawyer for Ms. Ventura, Douglas H. Wigdor, declined to comment on the government's indictment. The arrest of Mr. Combs, a producer, record executive, and performer who is also known as Diddy, Puff Daddy, makes him the highest profile figure in the music world to face criminal charges for sexual misconduct since R. Kelly, the R&B singer who, after trials in New York and Chicago, was sentenced to more than 30 years in prison for sex, child crimes, sex trafficking, and racketeering. So, Mr. Combs is a key figure in the global rise of hip-hop as a commercial force in the 90s and 2000s, helping to make stars of rappers and R&B singers like the Notorious B.I.G. and Mary J. Blige. After Ms. Ventura filed her suits, 5 women filed lawsuits alleging sex assault, and 3 other suits included accusations of sexual misconduct. Mr. Combs' lawyers are fighting all of them in court. After his arrest on Monday, lawyers for Mr. Combs said they were disappointed with the decision to prosecute him. Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children and working to uplift the black community, Mr. Combs' legal team said in a statement. He is an imperfect person, but he is not a criminal, they quote. The statement added that he had been cooperative with the investigation and had voluntarily relocated to New York in anticipation of the charges. I think what they're saying here is they are trying to demonstrate to the judge that he's not a flight risk. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide, his lawyers added, and he looks forward to clearing his name in court. Speculation about the federal case against Mr. Combs has been building ever since the raid on his homes. So prosecutors have been sending subpoenas to witnesses for months. And in anticipation of an indictment, Mr. Combs recently traveled to New York to make himself available to law enforcement. For days, he had been staying at the Park Hyatt New York Hotel on West 57th Street, largely hunkering down while awaiting any news, but also drawing some attention on social media with a visit to Harlem, where he grew up. We will continue following this story as more details are revealed. Keep it locked. Thanks for stopping by. Please head over to buymeacoffee.com/Samson King to make a small donation. Always like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.